What's up, people? Welcome to this episode of the Buy the Hood podcast or webcast because I don't know how you're consuming this content. I'm your host, as always. My name is Jimmy. And as we start off every show, that's with gratitude. Just want to say thank you to everyone who shows us support by sharing our episodes, all of the students within Buy the Hood University, and anyone that's helped us along this journey, sharing our content, buying our courses, showing up at events. We really haven't had anything live recently because of COVID or what have you, but we will be back out in the streets by the end of May, so stay tuned for more information on that. But I'm joined by my partner in crime, Corey. Corey, what's up, good brother?
Man, it feels good to be back. I was traveling the last couple times. We filmed for this, so I'm glad to be back and be sharing in this with the people.
Absolutely, man. So as you people know, our show is designed to highlight brothers and sisters who are doing amazing work, building businesses, doing community work. And this brother that we have coming on now is a very, very successful real estate entrepreneur. He's also an educator himself, and he's come on to share his story. And I look forward to hearing about it, man. We have Dan Harvey, Dan in real estate, man. Dan, how are you, good brother?
I'm doing good, bro. How's things going, fellas?
Oh man, we can't complain, man. Ain't nobody listening, man. But this is about you, man. Follow you on social media, watching your journey, and you're a very successful real estate investor within our area. But tell the people about your background, like where are you from, where'd you grow up at, and how was you coming up?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a Philly guy. I was raised in Southwest Philly. For anybody who knows Southwest Philly, I was raised on 59th in Windsor. Just a little small block close to Chester Avenue, and I am an accidental investor. I had no, I didn't have a dream of owning real estate. My story was or is I went to Dobbins, which is a trade school, and they had a program. It's called a co-op program, where you could work at a job using the trade that you were learning at Dobbins. And my trade was electronics. So I wound up getting a co-op job accepted to my junior and senior year. And after I graduated Dobbins, I started working at SEPTA full time. So I got that good job like right out of high school. So I was a union electrician at 17. So I found that solid job early. And around 19, I started a promotion business. It was me, my brother, and my buddy. We started off doing small parties, built that up. I don't know if you guys know like what N1 was doing with like the mixtapes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we were doing that pre-N1, and I got a funny N1 story. But I know we don't have a bunch of time, but
no, that's fine. Go ahead, man. Tell us the story.
So we were the first ones to bring in. So we would do basketball games where we bought street ballers inside. So we had the best players from Philly, the best players from Rucker Park, play indoors. We brought in rappers to like rap during halftime, and we had a DJ playing like during the game, hype it up and all that, right? So now this was 1999. So you guys could check the records in our first game we did at St. Joe's Hawk House. And it was interesting. So I was like 19, 20, right? So Super Green was wasn't a seasoned business guy. And our lawyer at the time was friends with the lawyers of the N1 guys. Those guys are from like the main line. At the time, they were just starting out. They were just, if you guys remember, they were just doing the shirts at the time. They weren't doing any other apparel. They were just doing shirts. But they were doing high school basketball games. They were like, you know what? You should really meet these guys. We were like, all right, well, cool. So we actually met at the old Zanzibar Blue, which is closed now. But we met there, told them what we were doing. It was like, well, we don't really have anything because we wanted to sponsor. Like, we really can't sponsor it. We can give you some shirts, but can we come out and can we record it? And I wasn't really, I'm like, oh, I don't care, come on out. You guys kind of see what happened, right?
Yes, sir. I see where this is going.
Like they were only doing high school basketball games. They weren't doing any street ball. We were literally the first guys to do bring street ballers inside. And when we came up with the idea, everybody thought we were crazy. It was like, who's going to play to see guys we can go up to North Philly and watch them play for free? Why would we pay for that? But how we put it together, nobody had ever done that. And when I tell you, it was crazy. It was crazy. And this was pre-Facebook, not really pre-internet, but at the really early stages. And we had people from New York coming down crazy. And from there, we had connected with Rucker Park. And then we started just doing games across the country. And so to bring it back to real estate, that's how I was going to become wealthy, right? I thought I was going to become like the next Alan Heyman. That didn't happen. But my mom is a real estate agent, but she's my mom, and she saw like, I had my good job at SEPTA because I was still, I still had my job. I was doing these events, and so I was making money, and she didn't want me to do it, what most young guys do when they have money, right? Blow it on whatever, right? Jewelry, clothes, women, whatever you blow your money on. And so she was like, well, why don't you buy real estate? And I was like, and I had zero interest, but it's my mom. I said, all right, I'm going to make mom feel good. I'm going to go out, take a look at some things, and I'll let her down later on, right? And and the interesting thing was, as I was looking around at these different properties, I said, you know what? I got to thinking. I said, well, this wouldn't be a bad third income stream, right? I have my job. I'm doing these events. And then now, I would have this rental property. So I actually wound up buying my first investment property was a bank-owned duplex on 57th and Hunter, if you guys know West Philly, which is like right off of Lansdowne. And my strategy was super simple. Like I had about like 23 to 25 grand saved up, and this property cost 20 grand. I was like, well, that works. And like that was it. It was a complete rehab. I didn't know anything about rehabs. I didn't know anything. I just had the cash. And so I went back to what I knew best at the time. At SEPTA, I was the overtime king, right? If overtime got to me, it was not getting by me. So I self-financed the whole rehab, right? Wow. So I'd work some overtime, I'd do some shows, and I'd work on a property, and I would do some of the work. I hired jack-laid contractors because I didn't know any good contractors at the time. It took me a good year and a half or so to get that first project done, right?
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question going back to this, because your story is unique in that you came right out of high school with that, quote unquote, good job that everybody's looking for, right? So what was it that made you even pursue, the promotions company? Like, because a lot of people would just sit there and say, look, I'm just going to sit here, get my check and be done. What was it that made you even look for outside, income?
Yeah, you know what? I think ultimately that I innately have an entrepreneurial spirit, right? I didn't realize that. I probably wouldn't have been able to really verbalize that back in the day, but that was in me. I had a creativity in me, and
did that come from your upbringing? Was it like your mother or a parent, or like, was it your upbringing that gave you that entrepreneurial spirit? Where'd that come from?
That's an interesting question. My parents were they were the get a good job crew. So like they were super excited. I had that SEPTA gig. I made it. If I had did nothing else, I was good. I will say this. So it's interesting because you know how you get older, you kind of get to look back at your life, and because people ask me this question. I will say that there was a time I remember my mom, and I don't know what age that she was. She had worked for the bank for a long time. something happened, and I don't know if she lost her job or whatever the case was. But I remember she came home. She said, "I'm never working for anybody else again," and she never did, never. And so I don't know if maybe that played a part. Somehow in my subconscious that stuck with me. But I do remember that clearly, her coming home and saying, "I'm never working for anybody else again," and then she never did. So maybe that definitely played a part in it. And I think we all just have natural gifts, and a natural sort of curiosity, and just being young. I think that part opened me up to it, as well too. Just having that kind of young spirit of just trying some things.
Yeah. So now let's get back into your story. So now, you have this other property. It took you a year to get everything together. So how do you go from working at SEPTA and having real estate kind of as a side hustle to becoming what it is to you today?
Yeah. So just to finish up that first story. So I finished that property up. Got some tenants in it. I hated it because I realized I didn't know how to be a landlord, because being a landlord is the skill set. I tell people that all the time. It was a skill set that I didn't have. So I wound up putting out the pain in the butt tenant. I put the property on the market on a Monday. I had 2 full price offers on a Friday. And I remember going to closing. And because I had self-financed everything, I didn't have any mortgage. And I got my check at closing. I'm like, damn, right? I got this check that was more than I made working all year long, right? And I mean, obviously, there's the cost of the property and cost of rehab, but to look at a check like that, I never in my life would have thought I would ever see a check like that. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And so it started to change my mind. It didn't change my mindset totally because it was so engraved in me to work the 30, 40 years and then retire and get the pension. But it started to change my mind. What got me out of SEPTA was I had done a couple of deals. So after I finished that deal, I had what they call house hacking now. I had bought a triplex. I moved into it, bought it for like $76,500, bought it from this burnt out landlord. I moved into it, fixed up the other units, rented them out, and I moved out after I met my wife. The next tenant bought it off me for $180,000, like 3 years later. And again, I'm like, damn, right? I'm making money. I have no idea what I'm doing. I said, if I read some books, I may be dangerous. So that's when I really started to get into the whole self-development part of my life, right? And so when I started going into YouTube and reading books about money and reading books about just self-improvement and all that sort of thing. And so when I turned 30, I made a decision. I said, by the time I'm 35, I'm quitting SEPTA. Right now, I only had one rental property, which is the house I grew up in Southwest Philly at that time because I'd sold it.
Yeah.
And I quit SEPTA 3 days before my 35th birthday. I was it's Christmas of 2014. I quit. Yeah. And what I did was everything I did from the moment I decided I was going to quit SEPTA, every decision, major ones that I made, was all predicated on that one objective, right? Does this fit in line with me leaving SEPTA? You know what I mean?
You were focused.
I'm sorry?
I said you were focused. You had your mission, like
absolutely focused. Like there was nothing was going to stop me. I mean, and that was how I worked. I mean, and people don't understand, like this is part of the process. Like I went ham with overtime, but not to buy stuff. I was buying rentals. And I was doing the BRRRR even before it was called a BRRRR. I didn't even know there was no such thing as BRRRR, right? I just realized I could buy properties cheap because when I started really buying real estate was after the collapse. right? So properties were really cheap, and I was able to buy them and just cosmetically at the time, because there were so many good deals, fix them up, and force the appreciation, and then refinance out. So I was doing that. That's how I bought so many properties, and I never changed my lifestyle. Like I never like, oh, I'm making all this money, I'm gonna raise my lifestyle up. Like I didn't. I kept working as if I only had to set the job, because about that time the whole parties thing had kind of died out. So I was just buying real estate and like working my butt off.
There's a lot of great advice in what you just said. First of all, you used your job as leverage to like build your dream, after work, but you still have that job as your base to help you build your dream. That's the first important thing I want to highlight. And the second thing is, as you were doing this, you never increased your lifestyle. So as your income went up, you didn't change your lifestyle. So it allowed you to amass what you started to amass. And I think that's important, because most people, the more money they make, the more they spend.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the model that they've been taught, right?
Yeah.
Every time you get a raise, you raise your lifestyle. And so you're basically staying right at the same level. And impressing people is more important than actually becoming financially free. And once you what really did it for me was just kind of look around, just going back to my job at SEPTA, there was that culture of the showing off, which to me never made sense. I'm like, yo, it's a union job. We all make the same amount of money. I got to look on the board. I can look at the contract, take how many years you have, and that's how much money. So when you go out and buy a more expensive car, what you're doing basically is just spending more of your time at work on those things, or when you have to work a bunch of overtime. So it to me, it wasn't that impressive. I'm like, all you're doing is forcing yourself now to have to work more overtime. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like we all make a lot of money. So if I come in here with a Benz, I'm still only making what I'm making. It like that impressive, like that impressive. It didn't make sense to me. So
I had a guy tell me this week. He said my neighbor went out and bought a brand new Range Rover, and he thinks that he's showing off. He said, but he also complains about driving to a job he hates every day. He said, how much you showing off if you're driving to a job you hate? So, I guess it's the same perspective. It's all a matter of your perspective. And your perspective is, look, I got, my mission that you accomplished, and congratulations for that. Because a lot of people never can, get to that point. But I think that's an amazing story of leveraging, that quote unquote good job to still follow your dreams. And you built that, off work, but even grabbing overtime. I'm gonna grab as much overtime as possible to get more income to further my dream. So I think that's an amazing story.
He said, if every decision I made, every major decision I made was predicated on that one decision. And that's something major right there. That's super major, because most people don't have the wherewithal to make that one decision and then the follow through to make sure that decision gets made. You know what I mean? Like the decision you made actually happened. So that follow through is amazing.
It is. And you talked about picking up like self-help and learning through reading books and things like that. How did going into that space change your life in terms of how you saw the world?
So this is major. So everybody wants to get to the bag and get to the money and blah, blah, blah. Mindset is the biggest obstacle you're going to face, right? I can only speak for myself, but coming from the background I came from, I had to unlearn a lot of the information that I learned first, right? Realize that a lot of the information that I was given was taught for me to survive and not thrive. And I had to really, think about that. Like, okay, this doesn't really make sense. This doesn't apply to me. Like maybe this applied to whomever taught me these ideals. And it may be your parents, it may be people you look up to. And this is not a knock at them. I believe they taught you the information that they thought would be helpful, but it's not. When you're going into these different levels, you have to work. Mindset is first. If you're thinking about getting the money first and your mindset is still garbage, you're going to blow of that money. So mindset books help me out greatly. There are mindset books that apply to money. There are the obvious good ones. There is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice, which is just the Think and Grow Rich book, but it has additional information by Dennis Kimbro.
Dennis Kimbro, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's 48 Laws of Power, which to me was a book about how to think.
Robert
a lot
Greene.
of people really don't know how to think. They just do. They don't really concentrate on how to think. And so, and how to be a strategic thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And so that taught me that, because I was, a lot of people are just not taught that. I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily was. And so that allowed me to be more in control of my thoughts. And there's been a ton of other books since then that has helped the process, because the thing about reading those books is every book opens up more information that you don't know. Yeah. And you're like, oh shoot, I didn't even know that was a thing. And now it takes you down this road, and it's like, and it's just, it starts to open up all these doors of information you didn't even know exist. And it's really kind of humbling, because, you realize how much you just don't know, and how much information it is out there that can help you grow. So if somebody came to you and they were looking to change their mindset, what would be, give me 3 books you would start them with? You name some of the classics. So give me 3 books you would start them with, and then give me maybe one that's not as popular that made an impact on you. Okay. So 3 books outside of the books that I just... No, if those are the 3, that's fine. Just like if somebody came to you and you had to give them here's a package, you go take these and read these with your mind right. What would those 3 books be? So there was a book I just read, like late last year. It's goodness gracious, there's something to not give a F. What you guys? I know you. Listen, I'm a heavy reader. The subtle art of not giving an F. That's what it is. Yeah, that's it. That book was really good. I really enjoyed that book. There's a book that's by Mark Manson, by the way. Yeah. So listen, I'm a heavy reader. So. Yeah, so Mark Manson, that's that one. And what's another? Yeah, that's it. That's a good one. There's actually one, honestly, that I'm reading right now that is blowing my mind, and it's called Psycho-Cybernetics. Okay, so now that's one I haven't heard of. Read it when you get a chance. It's the book is about dealing with self and what that means and what that self is. We don't have that voice in our head and these ideas, and how do you communicate with that? Right? How do you get, optimal self-image? How do you deal with these things? How do you talk to yourself? I mean, it is an amazing book. And that's sort of one of the things. It's like, who is really taught that? I mean, where do you get that information from? Unless your parents is on that type time, you don't get that information. So that's 2. What's the third one? Third one. I gotta give it up to Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rich Dad Poor Dad just really opened my eyes to the way that we are conditioned to think about money. So I mean, I gotta give him his due, because that started me questioning a lot of what we're taught. Yeah. The crazy part about that is, so I say about 90% of the people that come on our podcast, that's always one of their books. So it shows the kind of impact that book has had. But what I find interesting about that book is we've talked to people that specialize in, trading stock options, people that specialize in cryptocurrency. But that book is still what even made even though they didn't get into real estate, that book is still the book that shifted their mind and made them think about doing something else. So the interesting thing about the book is that it's actually not even a real estate strategy book. It's an accounting book. Yeah, it's a book about economic models, right? He's not telling you any formulas about buying real estate, really. He's just showing you through a common sense way of which economic model is in your best interest and which one is not, right? And but where do they normally shift you over to? And that conditioning is strong because people, again, people that we know, generally our parents and stuff like that, will push us into that model because that's all they know. And unless they've been exposed to something else, that's what they're going to push you into. It's not out of any malice or anything like that. It's what they know.
Yeah. So, it's funny because a lot of people name that book, the Kiyosaki book, and me and Corey talk about this. The one that impacted me the most was Cash Flow Quadrant. I remember reading that and then rereading it right away. Like, hold on. That's the one that kind of gave me that mindset shift.
Yeah, that's the one who set me. That's the one that sent me into entrepreneurship. I was like, oh man, I'm tripping.
Yeah. So, listen, your story is amazing, and now you've built up a multi-million-dollar real estate empire. But I heard you talking, and again, for you guys that are watching this, I'll make sure to put his Instagram within the comment section as well as the show notes. You guys got to follow him on Instagram. You give away a lot of game, a lot of information. But one of the things I heard you say on Instagram, which I found interesting, was about like pivoting your business and how your original strategy of just buying and holding in the Burr method, you kind of like, don't do that all the time anymore. And how you're selling off a lot of, properties and taking, I think that one of the things you said was, instead of me getting 200, 100, 200, 300 every month, I'm going to sell and take this lump sum and put that to work. Can you speak to how your business model has changed over the years?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the market dictates strategy, right? So when I first started in like 2010 and 2011, I mostly bought bank-owned properties that were listed on the MLS. And you could look through about 20 properties. You could take your time and make a decision and then give a lowball offer and still get them. Right. So that was perfect. Right. It was easy. And then that was my model. Then when I started getting involved with multifamily properties, when we were still dealing with the fallout from the 08 collapse, I was able to buy vacant multifamily properties, or even sometimes occupied, for cheap, right? Bank owned. Again, you could look through them and you could give a low ball offer, and like that was working out good. And then around 2017, 18, the market really changed, and it was harder to find deals on the MLS. So I started moving to wholesalers and that sort of thing. And I started doing heavier rehabs on multifamily. And then just buying existing multifamily deals became hard because people realized the value and the multifamily space, and they started selling even vacant multifamilies at a premium. So I said, wow, I need to figure out a way that I can beat investors to the punch, but still deal in a multifamily space. So that's where I kind of settled on the niche I'm in now, which is the multifamily conversion space, which is where I take properties that are not existing multifamily and I turn them into multifamily properties. So, and that's just by taking advantage of the Philadelphia zoning code and building by right, which means I don't have to take properties to the variance process. I don't have to talk to the neighbors. This is just what I can do by right. I understand the process. I understand the rehab process, and I understand how to analyze the numbers. And so that's a niche. That's a niche market.
Yeah, that's amazing. The riches are always in the niches, and that's a piece of information because I've had to go before the zoning board, and I hate that process. I hated having to get signatures and knock on doors and explain my project. That is oh my God, I hate it. So hearing that is interesting. How you figured out that niche.
And the interesting thing is, as far as I know, Philadelphia is the only city, which sometimes I hate to even mention this because I'm like, man, they're going to change this any moment. But Philadelphia is the only city that I know of where you can build a multifamily property by right. Right? It has to be, it has to, be a legal structure, but you don't have to go through the zoning process. Now,
Is it based on the code? Like, is it because it's RM this, or is it based on the code? Or okay.
So it's based on certain codes, and then understanding what you can do with those codes, right? Yeah. And then understanding how to. So a piece of it is understanding the zoning part of it, right? And then the other piece of it is understanding how to underwrite a multifamily property, right? So it's sort of two different pieces, and then the third piece is understanding the rehab portion of it, and then the last piece is understanding the financing for the back end, right? So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at about 4 different sets of like information, and if it hits on all 4 of those, all right, boom. And then what I do personally is I only invest in West Philadelphia. So
you just gave away a lot of game right there. If people are paying attention, because you're creating value, right? Mm-hmm. You're taking something as it stands, and based upon it fitting those criteria, you're changing the use of that property. But by doing that, you're adding value in the marketplace. Because once you get to a multifamily, you can start to value by cash flow. And that,
there you go.
Yeah, it's making sense. You're saying it. So much running through my head. Like, I do a lot of real estate analytical work, and what you just said is like mind blowing. You about to change my whole business model. That's amazing.
Yeah, and then you can go into neighborhoods where the comps are not that strong, but if you turn it into a true commercial property and it's valued on cash flow, now you can get the value. Now you can create the value, and so now I can see deals where somebody else. Well, I don't really see a deal there. Well,
you're creating value.
But if you understand how to underwrite it, you're like, oh no, I can turn this into a 5-unit building. I mean, I can, and I'm doing it right now. I mean, in West Philly alone, I have 78 units in the pipeline, right? And that's all by right. It's no variances on any of these projects.
That's powerful.
So that's this it is. I always look at Philadelphia now, and even though I don't agree with some of the political spaces that they're going into as far as it goes with investors, but the opportunity here, I liken it to the gold rush back in California, right? Mm-hmm. During the gold rush, everybody who took advantage of the gold rush, like during the gold rush, it probably wasn't even known as the gold rush. It was just like something that was going on.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. And it was the one dude who didn't know what was going on. Money being made all around him, right? And then 10 years later, he realized he lived through the gold rush. Like, oh, I was there. I'm like, listen, right now we're living it. If you live in Philadelphia, you're living in the gold rush.
Yes,
there's
true.
opportunities available in this city that's not available in other major cities. There's opportunities here now. If you're not taking the time to learn from guys like you, to learn from guys like me, to learn from any other, learn from people out in the market space, if you're not being serious about that, you're going to look up 10 years, 20 years, you're like, man, I was in a gold rush.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been doing this hardcore for 10 years, man. I've seen values go, literally double, triple. And that's not an exaggeration. And that's just in this short span that I've been doing.
Because when you think about it, if you look at it like geographically speaking, like if you look at where we sit in terms of the country in the Northeast, and you look at the surrounding big cities, there's still a lot of value to be made here, right? If you look at Boston and you look at New York and you look at DC, the bigger cities that surround us, and then you see in between there, you see like Philadelphia and Baltimore. We still got a lot of room to go in terms of getting up, in terms of value. So there's a lot of money. There's a lot of millionaires that'll be minted from like getting in the game at the right time. Timing is everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing is that works is we have a lot of old housing stock.
Yep.
So there's a lot of opportunity to turn this housing stock over. A lot of old warehouses. A lot, So there is all of that opportunity there. And if you're not being serious about learning how this works, I think you're going to miss a great opportunity. And you're going to be that person that was like during the gold rush that I don't know, somehow I just missed it. I was getting lit every weekend. I was getting like 1860 to 1870. I didn't realize everybody getting rich around me.
So listen, though, I know that one of the things that you're big on now is like educating people. Like so can you talk to us about that side? Like, do you take one-on-one clients, or how do you go about your education?
Yeah. So right now I am doing boot camps. I'm actually teaching the very niche that we just spoke about, right? So I'm teaching how to do multi-family conversions, because right now I think in Philadelphia it's one of the best opportunities to create value, get great cash flow, and what I call the Burr system on steroids, because you create such big equity spreads. So that's what I'm doing. I occasionally take one-on-one clients. I try not to do it often, just because I am really busy, buying projects and rehabbing and building. But the right now the bulk of my education is in boot camp form. I am going to be doing some online training, and we didn't talk about this, but I had bought a block of multifamily properties on 52nd Street, and so one of the spaces I'm going to be turning into a like a real estate hub. It's going to be a work share space, but it's going to have a real estate influence theme. So, there will be some educational parts to it as well that come with the membership for people who, may need an office space, but they don't mind, a shared work experience.
That's awesome. So man, you've given us a lot. Let me ask you this question. Along this journey to get to where you are today, what has been the biggest hurdle that you've had to overcome?
Oof, that one's easy. Painful. So scaling up is hard, right? I think people talk about this often. Probably the most difficult hurdle was a project I did, and I lost about $105,000. Yeah, that noise is there. But it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. Excuse me, because it forced me to step my game up. It was after I had left SEPTA, things were really starting to pick up for me. I was getting a lot of deals. I was finally picking up a good amount of private investors. And so I started to scale the business up. I was buying properties all over the place, but I didn't have the structure, didn't have the infrastructure to handle what I was doing. And because I didn't, a lot of things fell through the cracks. And what that taught me is what got me to that level, what got me to the financial independence that I could leave SEPTA was not going to get me to the next level of real estate development. Right, I couldn't be a one-man band, which I was trying to do. And so after I took that big hit, I shut down everything. I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and I just worked on process, worked on structure, hired an assistant, and then I came back harder. So that was my biggest obstacle, but also probably one of the biggest influences for me to step my game up.
Okay, you pay for that education. That's the way you gotta look at that, as $100,000 education.
Man.
Yeah.
That was expensive as hell, but you got it. That's a hell of an education.
That is a hell of an education. But you know what? It truly was. It truly was a hell of an education. Now, the interesting thing about it is I learned some things other than the scaling up. The other thing I learned is that losing money, even big money, is not the end of the world. It didn't kill me.
Yeah,
I'm still here. It didn't kill me. And so a lot of times that's our worst fear. Like, oh my God. Did it hurt? Yeah. Did it set me back? Yeah. But I grew from it. And what happens is it makes you realize that it's not the end of the world. You take an L, it's not the end of the world. You just gotta keep it, you don't live there. The problem is people start to live in that mistake. Like, oh man, I lost 100 grand, and now they gunshot. Now they don't want to do anything. Now, people sometimes wear their mistakes or failures as I call it like a blanket, becomes comfortable to them. And it's like, that's the last thing that you should do. Like, you feel it, you deal with it, and you keep it moving. You don't wear it around you and bring, I'm a failure. No, man, whatever. Like, it happens. And almost everybody I know that has done really well has taken some big L's, right? It's a part of the game. And anybody who's not being honest about that, I think you need to look at them a little suspect. Like, really, you've been in the game this long, you've been doing this many deals, you never took an L? How is it even possible?
It's not possible.
It's just not possible.
And it doesn't matter what business you're in. I don't care if you're in real estate, if you're selling shoes, if you're in the stock market, you're going to have to take L's. That's part of it, because that's the only way to learn. That's when you actually learn.
It is. And it's life happens. Like, you can have the best plans and like something out of COVID hits. Like, how do you plan for that? Come on, like nobody could plan for that. So it's just reality. And it doesn't speak to who you are as a person. It's just something that happened. And so you don't allow that to become your story and you feed into it. And I often, like, I got a buddy of mine who, we started around the same time. I bought a property, he bought a property. He had an issue with a contractor, but it's like it devastated him. And it's just like, anytime you talk about real estate, it was like, well, I don't want to, deal with that. And it's like, I mean, you can't keep holding on to that, right? I mean, it happened, like, let it go. I mean, just imagine, for myself, if I let a bad experience with one contractor stop me, that would be crazy. So, that's basically,
listen, man. Yeah, you inspire me, man. Like, I love this talk, man. You're giving us a lot of information, and I'm feeling inspired. Corey, you got any questions for the brother, man?
I do. So when you were transitioning from working at SEPTA into your own business, what was the thing that says, all right, I'm actually done with SEPTA? Like, you said you did it in the time frame you wanted to do it, but what was the, all right, this is the final straw, I'm actually done? What was the thing that made you walk away?
It was that commitment that I made. So when I said 5 years, I meant 5 years. That was it. There wasn't. So
there wasn't anything at the job. It was just like, all right, I'm done.
There was no subsequent thing. No, I decided 5 years was the time frame, and 5 years was it. And what happened was, honestly, and this is the part I love, it was sort of opposite of that almost. So I had decided I'm leaving in 5 years. So I had, during that time frame, I obviously, things happen. And we had this one boss who was you gotta try to be nice, because it was a jerk, super jerk. And he would, and him and I used to work with the guy, and then he kind of moved up. So I remember he brought me into his office, and I had, it was a union job, so I had a union steward there, and he's like going through his paces of trying to halfway scare me. And in my mind, now this is year 4, like year 4 is a month. I'm like, I'm out of here soon, my man. Like, in my mind. So in that meeting, I'm feeling like I'm not even listening to this dude. You know what I mean? I was feeling so good about that. Like, I felt like I was in charge of what was going to happen next. Now, what I will say, one thing that, just to be honest, one thing that almost stopped me, had nothing to do with work, was that in between that time frame, I had my daughter. So I got married, I had my daughter. And my daughter was born in the 4th year, like 7th month of my 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And I'm like an old school guy. Like, I gotta provide for my family. And so I started like doubting if I should do it. I'm like, I got this job. And I remember talking to my wife, and I said, I don't know, I think I should wait. She said, if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. And I remember, and I said, damn. I said, well, she got this much confidence in me. It's not like I ain't leaving a Taco Bell, Burger King gig. I ain't knocking nobody, but this is union. I'm making real money. I got full benefits. If she got that much faith in me, I gotta believe she see it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go ahead and push through. So, shout out to my wife, man. I think if she'd have gave me a different look or a different tone, I might have moved differently.
Yeah,
Because I was definitely on the fence.
Yeah, I got a couple questions based on that. First question is, throughout this whole process, like, how were your coworkers looking at you as you're building this empire? Like, did they believe you, or did they say, oh, whatever? Like, how was that treatment?
So that's interesting. I'll be honest with you. I almost think they was too close to it. I used to run around telling them, y'all need to get into this real estate thing. I was literally, I told you guys, like, I was making hits, 100 grand here, 70 grand here. I'm like, y'all need to be buying real estate, and young guys on the job, and young girls, I tell them, why buy a house? Why buy this big expensive house? You live in an apartment now. You live at your parents' house. Go buy a duplex, triplex, 4-unit. Use that FHA money. Put almost nothing down. But, he didn't want to hear it.
Gotcha.
Now, what I did was I never told anybody I was leaving September, and I tell you what. Not even on some secret squirrel stuff. I didn't want anybody to talk me out of it.
I
didn't want anybody to put their fears on me. So I didn't tell anybody until about 2-3 months out. And the guy who was the best man at my wedding, I didn't tell him about 3-4 months out. He wasn't happy about it, but it was like, I didn't want people they mean well, or at least, but
they project.
They will assign their fears to you.
Yeah.
Or they will inject that right into you. They will do, are you sure you? And honestly, people smiled and whatever, but the word was, oh, Dan crazy, playing himself.
That's also projection, though.
Huh?
That's also projection. That's really them talking to themselves for real. Like,
Yeah. But now it's like, oh, I always knew you was going. I always knew. Yeah, now you know.
now you know, because I did it already.
Yeah, they got the vapors. Yeah, they got the vapors. Listen, the last thing I wanted to ask is, based upon what you said, is you talked about your wife and her support. How important is it to have a partner that believes in the mission and supports what you got going on?
I don't know any other way. It's everything. If you gotta fight this is not an easy process. One thing I want to make this very clear, because I think sometimes this gets pushed as this is an easy thing. Becoming financially independent is something very few people ever do, right? So this is not an easy process by any measure. So if you gotta try to do that and then fight with people fight with the person that you live with, that's going to make it very difficult. I'm sure it's not impossible, but very difficult. So it needs to. It's extremely helpful if they have your back, right? But it's also extremely helpful if you're giving them a reason to believe in you, right? Like, you're not a flake. You're not somebody. You're somebody who, when you do something, you do it seriously. That's going to definitely help you out. But yeah, my wife has always had my back. So I would hate to see what that feels like for her not to. I don't know. But
yeah, that's amazing, man. So listen, first of all, Corey, you got anything you want to say?
That was that's the common thread through a lot of these that we have done, that spousal support is super important to wherever that person is going, whether that person is male or female, and whatever they're doing, their spousal support was the impetus to either grow bigger or to go to the next level that they weren't currently on. And so that's an amazing thing that, and again, a common thread through a lot of these guests that we've had.
I had a mentor tell me, like, your most important business decision is who you choose to spend your life with. It has nothing to do with any property. I said, okay. So yeah, man. So listen, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for your time. I know your time is valuable. I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing the information you did, for telling your story. I think a lot of people will learn from this, and will and basically motivate them to get started, because I'm motivated. I'm about to go look for some deals now, because I'm like, Dan got me motivated, man. Don't live in your mistakes. So this is very powerful, man. So I just want to say thank you. Wish you much continued success, and we'll share your information with all of our followers. Please make sure you go check out what Dan's got going on, because he gives a lot of information away on his Instagram page. He's an amazing follow, so make sure you guys go follow him there. And as he continues to build, his empire, man. So you've went from working at Scepter to building a multi-million-dollar real estate empire, and I think that's amazing to show people that look like us are out here doing these kind of powerful things, man. So
and for people that's not from Philadelphia, Scepter is the transit authority.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. This is
it's also like the job that, if you didn't go to college, basically everybody's trying to get like Scepter, and then maybe like PGW,
Yeah, listen,
like the main gigs that everybody wants to do.
A lot of people that go to Scepter is like, I made it, I'm done. They getting Scepter 17, 18, they about to do a 40, 50-year career. Like, they ain't even looking to go nowhere else. So that's why it's interesting to see you transition from there to, like, running your own empire. So I think that's pretty powerful.
It's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And the money part of it is not the biggest reason why. It's the growth as a person, as a business person. I've met some amazing people. I get to talk to people like you guys. And I would have never had this experience of personal growth had I stayed there, even if I was making the same money, wouldn't have the same impact. So that part of it is that intangible. A lot of times you go out looking for the money, which is cool. Nothing wrong with money. I got nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's all these other ancillary things that happen to you, man. That's just like awesome, that people have to live for themselves. I mean, you can get get them motivated, man, but to actually experience it is just a thing of wonder.
And you said that key word, the impact, because you're having an impact not only on the communities where you're building a better housing stock, but also teaching others how to do the same. So continued success, good brother. I definitely want to say I appreciate you. And to our audience, like I said, make sure you follow everything he's got going on. This has been episode 101. So we'll see you next week for episode 102. But as we always say, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep. Game elevates, and we shall see you guys on the next episode. Peace.